Last week, the Australian government released the National Climate Risk Assessment, a report that shows what will happen to Australia as the planet continues to warm, and it got a lot of attention. But the thing is, there's another part of the report that the government refuses to release, and barely anyone's talking about it except a couple of MPs, one of which described it as terrifying. Here's the story. Basically, there are two reports that talk about the effect that global warming will have on Australia. The first is the National Climate Risk Assessment, which was released in September. I've done a few videos on what's in that, but the TLDR is the report talks about things like how many Aussies will be living in places that will experience flooding from rising sea levels, or how much longer heat waves will last for, and then how many more heat-related deaths we'll see. The report is concerning enough, but here's the thing. There's another report that Senator David Pocock has described as terrifying. This report was written by the Office of National Intelligence and looks at the national security threats posed by climate change. The problem is, we don't exactly know what's in it, but it mostly looks at what climate change means for external threats to Australia. Other countries like the UK have done similar reports and actually made them public. One report that would likely be similar was published by the United Kingdom's peak security think tank Chatham House and looks at global factors and risks. That report expects if emissions don't drop dramatically by 2030, crop yields will drop 30% by 2050, while food demand will be 50% higher. Globally, almost 700 million people a year by 2040 are likely to be exposed to droughts of at least 6 months duration, which is nearly double the global historic annual average. Cascading climate impacts would also mean food running out, diseases starting to spread, social unrest rising, and then more conflict. So why does the Australian government refuse to release its report? Well, in December last year, some independent MPs were actually shown this ONI report. Senator David Pocock told the Saturday paper in March that the government not acting on what the national security agencies say is coming is negligent. But he said it's no surprise that the government has been sitting on the report because we're woefully underprepared for what's coming. MP Zali Steggall more recently told the Saturday paper what's essential and has been missing is that the government hasn't acknowledged that the planet's temperature has a massive impact on how well countries behave and not fight each other. An element of this underpreparedness is in our military. So Dr. Albert Palazzo, the former Director of War Studies for the Australian Army, told me that we're buying the wrong kind of military equipment for the types of conflicts that climate change will bring. Palazzo pointed out that the multi-billion-dollar AUKUS submarines can't do much when it comes to the regional conflicts over food and resources that climate change is likely to bring. This is further backed up by this report written by a group of former defence leaders, including the former Chief of the Australian Defence Force, Chris Barry, that calls for the release of the ONI report. It also accuses multiple Australian governments of failing to assess looming climate risks, and points out that Australia remains missing in action on climate security risks, with climate downplayed to a cameo role in defence and security policy and planning.